This is Greenland, the largest island in the world, and right now it seems to be in the news pretty much everywhere. You have probably noticed it too. Greenland is suddenly on everyone's lips because Donald Trump has become strangely obsessed with taking over the massive island. But today, we want to zoom out a bit from the current headlines and statements by the US president and seriously ask the question, what does Donald Trump actually want here? Because it is a bit strange that the conquest of Greenland by the United States appears to be moving so strongly into Donald Trump's focus at precisely this moment in time. And in fact, there are a whole range of reasons that actually have nothing to do with Greenland itself. For one thing, there are the notorious Epstein files. Trump and his Justice Department were originally supposed to have released the complete documents by now, but to this day, the Epstein files are still almost entirely under lock and key. Not even 1% of the documents have actually been released, and many Americans are now asking themselves what exactly Trump is trying to hide there. As if that were not enough, the immigration authority, ICE, has also caused so much controversy that Trump's reputation in America has taken further damage. Under Trump, armed ICE agents have been given entirely new powers, and recently the agency's operations have been escalating again and again, to the point that not long ago, an innocent woman was shot dead in the open street by ICE officers, an act that was barely condemned by the Trump administration. All of this has led to Trump's approval ratings currently being at a low point. Among younger voters, for example, Trump began his term in office with an approval rating of plus 10%, and just 1 year later, he is now at an astonishing minus 32% approval. The president is therefore aware that his popularity is falling sharply, and he is trying with all his might to counteract it. It seems as though Greenland could be a convenient distraction for Donald Trump, because by constantly stoking the issue, it now dominates the media so strongly that incidents like the Epstein files or the brutality of ICE agents are barely mentioned anymore, and that is sorely needed. Because this year, the so-called midterm elections are taking place in the United States, and Republicans are currently at risk of losing their majority in the U.S. Congress. If Trump's party does not win here, it would literally be the end of his presidency. Because Democrats have already announced that they will initiate an impeachment process against Donald Trump if they win in the fall. That Trump fears these elections is also evident from his statements. He recently said that the election was corrupt anyway, and even questioned why this unnecessary election should be held at all, because according to him, Democrats were already working on massive election fraud. But Trump's interest in Greenland is not just about distraction. There are a few other reasons as well that are pushing the US president toward this crazy step. And one reason may sound completely absurd, but is actually highly relevant to his plans to annex Greenland, namely the Nobel Peace Prize. The US president is obsessed with receiving the Nobel Peace Prize and seems willing to do almost anything to get it. But why is Trump so fascinated by it? It all began in 2009, when then-President Barack Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize after just 9 months in office. Even back then, Trump felt that Obama had received this prize for nothing. And while the award made huge waves at the time and cemented itself as a great honor for Obama, Donald Trump wanted to receive that same great distinction himself. He wants to finally surpass Obama and go down in history as a president of peace. If you have a very simple worldview, all of this makes perfect sense. A president who brings peace to the world is a good president, but Donald Trump pushes this philosophy to a completely absurd level. During the campaign, he already claimed that he would end more wars than any president before him. And in the summer of last year, just a few months before the Nobel Peace Prize decision, Trump declared in a speech that he ended 8 wars plus. Not only the war in Gaza, but also the India-Pakistan conflict, the conflict between Rwanda and Congo, and many other wars around the world. But in October came the bitter defeat for the US president. He lost the decision, and he said that he was very disappointed by the outcome. For him, this decision was an insult to the American people. What happened afterward was something that even Hollywood directors probably could not have made up. Because in January of this year, the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, the Venezuelan Democrat Maria Machado, traveled to Trump and handed over her newly received Nobel Peace Prize to him. This gesture was very special to Trump. until just a few days later when the Nobel Committee explained that a Nobel Prize cannot be transferred and Trump therefore de facto did not receive a Nobel Prize after all. The whole thing eventually culminated in a letter so bizarre that even many Trump supporters thought it was a parody. Trump wrote to the Norwegian president, "Dear Jonas, in light of the fact that your country has decided not to award me the Nobel Peace Prize, even though I have ended 8 wars plus, I no longer feel obligated to think exclusively about peace, even though it will always remain a priority, but can now consider what is good and appropriate for the United States of America." Trump also explained in this letter how he views Greenland and what his intentions for the country are. He wrote, "Denmark cannot protect this land from Russia or China. And why do you even have a property right? There are no written documents. It is only the case that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we also had boats that landed there. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not safe as long as we do not have full and total control over Greenland." When you read this letter, you get the impression that Trump wants to receive Greenland as some kind of gift from NATO allies and that Greenland is crucial to the national security of the United States. In the letter, he also very explicitly questions Denmark's ownership rights to the island itself. But why exactly is Greenland so important to Trump? Trump's entire plan to acquire Greenland as an extension of the United States essentially revolves around 2 core points. One point concerns Greenland's strategic position itself. Greenland lies between Europe and the United States. From a military perspective, this location offers several advantages. The US military could control the so-called GIUK gap, meaning the North Atlantic Passage through which Russian submarines enter the Atlantic. Another advantage of Greenland's location is the Arctic Ocean surrounding the island. For now, this polar sea is largely unnavigable, but within the next decade or two, climate change could melt the ice to such an extent that global shipping traffic between China and the United States would pass over the North Pole. The other core point, however, revolves around Greenland itself. The island is gigantic. When Trump presents the island on world maps, he is thrilled by its size. On a normal map, Greenland does indeed appear enormous, almost as large as the entire African continent. But what Trump may not fully realize is that Greenland's size is massively distorted by the Mercator projection. In reality, Greenland has only about 1/14 the area of Africa, and even Algeria or the Congo are larger. Despite all this, numerous natural resources are believed to lie beneath Greenland. More precisely, Greenland is a veritable treasure trove. There are deposits of rare earths, uranium, lithium, and cobalt, as well as gold, diamonds, and rubies. What is probably most interesting for the US president, however, are Greenland's vast oil reserves. So the island does offer several advantages for Americans. It provides the United States with better protection against China and Russia. Also, it contains enormous natural resources. And perhaps the most important aspect for Trump, it makes America look absolutely gigantic on world maps. But even here, it must be said that it only seems plausible at first glance. On closer inspection, much of this actually makes little sense. For example, the extraction of Greenland's valuable natural resources. Greenland has no infrastructure. There are no roads across the island and no transportation network. There are no trains or railways at all. So first, a basic infrastructure would have to be built for Greenland before one could even begin constructing drilling platforms or setting up mines. Now, one might think that everything could simply be brought directly to the coasts by ship instead, but many deposits are located deep inland, and the coasts themselves are completely frozen for long periods of the year. Even if you wanted to build these facilities, there are few places in the world worse suited than Greenland, because the slowly thawing permafrost soil makes the ground so muddy and unstable that it is practically impossible to construct heavy industrial facilities there. And the long periods of darkness and the extremely low winter temperatures also make such an undertaking nearly impossible. At -40 degrees over an extended period, steel would become brittle and heavy machinery would become unusable. Experts estimate that operating a mine in Greenland would be more than 10 times as expensive as in Australia or the United States itself. which would completely deter private companies. And the other core argument, the strategic security that Greenland would provide to America, also makes little sense on closer inspection. This is primarily because the United States already defends Greenland and has done so since 1951. Militarily speaking, the US already effectively controls Greenland, and since Denmark and Greenland are NATO partners, China or Russia could not claim Greenland for themselves anyway, without coming into conflict with the United States. And even though Trump repeatedly portrays China and Russia as major threats here, it is highly uncertain whether either country actually has any active interest in annexing Greenland. Russia has long been focused primarily on securing its own northern Siberian route, and China has no legal claims in the Arctic at all. It is far more likely that the current dispute over Greenland between Europe and the United States plays directly into Russia's hands because it makes the NATO alliance as a whole appear rather weak. But now we want to ask you, does Trump perhaps see something else in Greenland that we are completely overlooking? Do you think the US president actually has a solid plan for the country here? Or do you see the whole thing more as a distraction from other issues? Feel free to share your theories and assumptions in the comments, and we will see you next time.